And where?
I don't know. It's going around.
Yeah, it goes round and around. I don't think we're live yet. Oh! You guys
Just
have no idea how
least
exciting this is for us.
It's very exciting. It's the most we get out ever.
Yeah, really.
It's hanging out with the gathering room folks.
So here's something we don't often say. Welcome to the gathering room. I'm Rowan Mangan.
Hi. I'm Martha Beck.
There you go. Look at us. We're so professional.
Oh, look, other people are there.
Hi, Hannah.
Hannah's here. We're set. Let's go. Hannah is plenty. Oh, good. Shannon.
Oh, here they all are.
And Lucy.
Hello.
Hello, and Emily.
Hello.
Emily Elizabeth Steinberg. Ease. That's a really nice name. Wow.
Yes.
And Corinne, how you doing from Lillehammer? Always showing up.
Hi,
Sophie.
Hi, Pam. Hi, Pam.
Stephanie.
Some Pam.
Cassie.
Hey, Casey.
Casey? Is that Casey?
and Pam.
Oh, Casey and Pam.
We met those two at London Lazy last year. It was lovely.
Ginny, they're awesome. Two smarter ladies you'll never meet. And Laloon. Laloune? I don't know. Anyway, we love you too.
We love all of you.
Gail, hi, Christina.
How's your week?
Mary Ann,
guys?
Amy, how are you?
Tell us everything.
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 We say, and then we don't listen. We just don't listen.
We just don't listen.
Have you noticed our hairstyles are migrating
we just
into each
noticed
other?
this.
We just noticed this. It's just, I don't know. I don't know how these things happen.
It's something to do with the long-term effects of always being in the same house as each other and never going anywhere where we get exposed to any other
Something like that.
hairstyles.
It's a contagion.
It's a contagion.
Speaking of contagion.
Now, before I go,
Yes.
there's something that I want to make very clear.
Yes.
Today's gathering room is called The Joys of Quarantine.
Yes.
Now, because I'm going to read all the
ironic.
comments, I just want you guys to know we know what quarantine means. We know this isn't literally quarantine.
No.
Everyone's calling it quarantine, so we're just calling it quarantine because we're chill.
And also,
But
it's
we know.
ironic. It's not.
Is it
The joy of quarantine is meant to be ironic.
ironic?
You know,
But
it's
I'm
not
just,
easy.
I'm just like looking after the pedants, and
Yes.
I know who you are, guys.
Yeah,
I'm one of you.
we know those of you out there with your etymological dictionaries.
I think you'll find that quarantine actually. No, it's all right. We know. We already got it. You don't need to. No need to write to the end.
cartoon where somebody's telling his kid, we named your sister Paris because that's where we were when we conceived her. He says, okay, bye, Dad. And the dad says, bye, quarantine.
There you go.
There you go.
Keeping it topical, Marty.
Boom,
Love
boom,
it.
boom. Okay.
You know what? I'm going to out of here.
Okay, you're going to
I'll be
Zoom. You're going to Zoom. Today you're going to, not literally Zoom. Everybody's Zooming. But this is a different, this is physical Zoomage
off I go.
in the space.
You guys, if you have questions about the joys of quarantine, like, are you kidding me, Martha Beck? Start asking them now.
I was supposed to put on, so I was trying to put do not disturb on my watch, and instead I made it call to my phone. Hello! They called to each other. Sorry about that. We're going a little mentally insane here in the quarantine places. So yeah, it's not literal quarantine, but you know whereof I speak. And it's not necessarily joyful. Like it's by definition not supposed to be that joyful. And especially now in the northern hemisphere, here comes the sun, and like the trees are finally green around our house, and it's a beautiful day. I'd love to go out. Can't really do the things we used to do. And you know, in the southern hemisphere, people are getting depressed in Australia because it's like, the days are getting shorter, and we can't go outside, and the wallabies are in the streets. I don't know. Crikey, there's a wallaby in the street. That's what they're all saying down in Australia, you guys there. And it sucks. But here's the thing. I don't know if I told you guys that I have recently learned to go to sleep at a very late stage in my life. I basically had to be hit over the head with a hammer to go to sleep my whole life. But then I found this meditation, and it's about how to find joy and more specifically pleasure in situations that you once found profoundly uncomfortable. And it's working for me beautifully. And it made me think, I always used to think, because I've had a lot of pain in my life, I used to have chronic pain for 12 years, and I have to be I have to be very careful. I have to live in complete integrity and do lots of exercise and stuff, or the pain comes back. So, but not very badly, not like it was, not even close. So I was thinking one day as I was getting a massage, I like very deep tissue massage. And this massage therapist was working on me and like had her entire hand under my shoulder blade and was like pawing around in there. And I was like, this is heavenly and I love it. And if I were just walking down the street or driving in my car and I had this level of pain under my collarbone, I would go straight to a hospital and say, I'm dying. There's something really wrong with me. And I lay there thinking, the reason this is so delicious to me has something to do with the fact that it's so painful. So some pain is purely destructive and it doesn't feel good at all. But then there's other kinds of pain that are healing. Like if you get a cut and it gets infected and it starts to inflame, the feeling is very, very alarming and it's painful, but it's not joyful at all. If you then get alcohol on the wound and clean it, it feels painful, but part of the body goes, oh, thank you. That's what it needed, at least if you're used to getting cured by alcohol. So I started to think about this in my learning to sleep, and I started doing the technique that I've been using to sleep during the day to enjoy quarantine. And here's how you do it. Find an aspect of the shutdown, of the pandemic, that is bothersome to you. Yeah. So think about it like, oh, I can't go for coffee with my friends. I am very frustrated that my daughter and her husband moved to Pennsylvania so we could see each other more often, and I never get to see her. That freaking bums me out. So I'll take that as mine. And you take yours, whatever it is that's really troubling you. And then here's the key to this whole technique. You focus on the pain. You acknowledge that it's there. You focus on the discomfort or the discontent, and you acknowledge that it's there. And then you just hold it. Like you allow it to be as it is. And while you're aware of it, you also need to find something else that brings pleasure or joy. So I was doing this yesterday. I was like, oh, I can't go out. My foot is hurt. There's a quarantine. I can't do any of the things I want. And I held that in my head. And then I said, okay, I'm going to send out like little filaments of sensory detectors. And I'm going to go through my whole life and look at all the things that I really enjoy about being locked down in a global pandemic. And we are not typically inclined to think of the joys of being locked down in a global pandemic. But I started to feel the ways. I started to think about the little red fox who has been hanging out in our backyard and coming up to the bird feeder and just generally trotting around and making the dogs crazy. I started to think about hundreds of humpback whales are massing off the coast of South Africa, and humpback whales only travel in pods of 3 or 4 usually. And now 200 of them will squish into the space the size of a football field. There's plenty of ocean down there. They don't have to squish, even if it's getting too warm other places. I don't know what's happening, but watching that being able to sit and watch that on my computer and go, I think they know something. Like, I think if we could translate those humpback whale songs, the 200 of them, they'd be down there going, okay, guys, phase 1 is working well. What do we do now? What's the next step? And I thought about how I've been reaching out more in terms of certainly news. I mean, I'm obsessed with the news and I'm obsessed with books. It's been really fun for me reading books about plague and pandemic in all the different times of the world. It's a whole section of sociology I hadn't really paid much attention to. I love it. I love that we have calls. I have calls with family in Australia, family in England, family in Florida, family in Pennsylvania, that we can, I actually think we're more cohesive, more connected, and more appreciative of each other because we're under lockdown. I love the clarity of the skies. I just started to feel that. And at the same time, I'm thinking, this really sucks. I'm really limited. And I don't like it. But here's the interesting thing. Even if, like, I will focus on a point of physical pain in my body, and I actually will twist to get to a point where I get a jab of pain, and then go looking for sensations of peace or pleasure in the rest of my body. And it becomes harder and harder to experience the sensation of that I was calling pain as pain. It starts to feel like pure sensation. It starts to feel like this sort of, it's just the energetic pulse of creation, of material form. And so the perception of it as pain disappears. So as I did this exercise with the quarantine, with the lockdown, shutdown, whatever you want to call it, I started to feel my anxieties and my worries as something interesting and exciting. Like I can enjoy it the way I would a massage, even though that doesn't really make any sense. So the biggest anxiety that I've heard people express, and my biggest anxiety, is about the economy. Now, I think the economy had to change. I think that ever since the dawn of time, but certainly since like the Industrial Revolution, there's capitalism has run amok and it's destroying people's lives anyway. And most of the jobs people lost, 30 million people have lost their jobs now. Most of those jobs weren't purely enjoyable. So there's an upside to it. I also really get that people are panicking about how to pay the rent, how to pay the mortgage. I panic about how to pay the people that I provide, jobs to. I'm an employer, sort of. I employ independent contractors to run my coaching program. So I want to make sure that they are supported. I've talked to other people who employ other people, and we're like some of the ones who stay up latest, getting the darkest circles under our eyes and worrying the most. So if we take the issue of the economy, and you can feel the texture of that type of anxiety, and for me, money anxiety has always been there, and I bet it's probably been there for you too. So let's take that aspect of the quarantine to do this exercise. So think about your own economic anxiety, your anxiety over the economy in general collapsing, and that sort of worried, to me, it's almost like I've been rubbed against a cheese grater. It's so raw and it's so irritated and it's so constant, this, the need for money in our culture, which, by the way, humans didn't evolve to experience. Hunter-gatherers don't feel that way. Even the few hunter-gatherers that are left, they think that our need to have sustenance going forward is just a mistrust of nature and an insanity. So I'm not saying that it's a natural part of us, but man, is it ever acculturated into us. So let's all go to our fear about money and the economy. And then I want you to think of something specifically about not having money going in and out as much. And I want you to see if you can find any pleasure in it, anything positive. For example, the first thing, and I'm doing this real time with you, the first thing that comes to me is I've been clearing out my stuff. Like I've been giving bags to Goodwill, like getting rid of stuff instead of getting more stuff. Like I'm not acquiring as much, but I'm letting go more. And the letting go, which you could see if you were obsessed with matter and objects as wealth, you could see that as losing something, but you could also see it as gaining openness, gaining space. And it may be that as we pull back from the ways that we've made money, even though there definitely is this very difficult transitional moment. And I'm not minimizing the stress on all of you who have financial worries. But at the same time, if we can find the openness of releasing the need to have the same kinds of economic arrangements, it opens up a space in the mind and the heart that, as I said, didn't evolve to worry about money. They evolved to function in nature, trusting and allowing themselves to discover. We evolved to allow ourselves to discover as we go along how to live in harmony with nature and thereby support ourselves. So it's like that's gotten all crunched up by the capitalist economy. And as it eases, can you find an openness in there? And it doesn't have to be an explanation for what's going to happen next, but that space that opens up allows creativity to arise. And it is not the old job that gave you sustenance. It was that somebody created something that added value. So if you can, if that institution disappears and you're left with openness, then into the openness comes an answer for any question that you pose. If you have an answer and you have no open, if you ask a question and you have no openness, you can't receive the answer. But if you ask a question like, how will I support myself? And then you open, answers come that you never would have imagined. Never, ever would have imagined. So that's two little examples about how you can enjoy your quarantine, find any little thing that is troubling, bring in your awareness of the joy around you, and then specifically apply it to money. And I am now here to answer your questions. And I'm
going to zoom back in.
Here comes the gracious badger.
Zooming.
So just remember is that you can do it. I always hold my hands up like this. Hold the negative and then go reaching for the positive. And don't try to blot out the negative. Watch the effect on the negative feelings as you find the positive, and they start to open and change and everything starts to relax. And that's the basic principle. So I hope I got it across. It's like magic. It's an odd magic, but it's really powerful.
So cool. And it's not obvious either.
No, it's very subtle. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But it's, once you get the concept, hold and open, then it starts to change. I think it's changing my nervous system, to be honest. I think I'm becoming more relaxed.
I'm going to have to try this.
Yeah, I think
just sitting around while you explain it to other people.
I didn't say anything.
Emily wants to know, why is Ro called the gracious badger? Such a good question.
Because when she decided to do this array of hairstyle with the silver hair and the dark hair.
Like you have to, it's quarantine. I can't do anything with it
right
now.
It's perfect. And I thought, that's like a badger array. But I thought, but badgers are rather combative and aggressive. But Ro's not combative and aggressive. She is gracious. So she became the gracious badger.
It's one of those Martha Beck
in less than no
things.
Time. It was one of those things that came in when I just allowed myself.
I don't think it came from you. I think it came through
you. It came through me. Yeah. Yeah.
I have some awesome questions, and I also want to thank everyone who's just been sharing the ways that they have been finding joy in the quarantine. And
sweet. I can't wait to read them.
Yeah, everyone should just read through them because it makes you feel good. But here is a great question for you, Martha Beck. Heidi asks, what's up with all the conspiracy theories?
Yeah. Okay.
Great question.
So here's what we know about the novel coronavirus. Kind of nothing. I mean, there are precedents and there's more research, and we do kind of have, I mean, I hate to say this, guys, but I've been reading about pandemics ever since we've started this lockdown, and they're trying to get a vaccine in 18 months. That is extremely optimistic.
Mandatory disclaimer, Martha is not a medical professional.
I am not an
epidemiologist.
Not at all
Please
whatsoever.
Don't take your coronavirus news from this
source. Absolutely not. That's how, that's how conspiracy theories get started. Okay, so there's probably going to be, it's probably not going to be that on May 8th, when Pennsylvania opens, the coronavirus disappears forever. I will say that much. Because Anthony Fauci said it, and I like him. So we are left in a situation where now we're sort of, other states are starting to open up, and we actually don't know what's going to happen. And the experts can get up and give us their very best advice, and they're very smart, and they've worked really hard, and they know a lot. But about this situation, they don't know. The future, we don't know. Now, we, particularly culturally, are very obsessed with having answers and having control. And when you have no answers and no control, you start to create stories to explain the situation. And typically, there's a big part of the mind that Jonathan Haidt, who's a social psychologist, calls the righteous mind. And it's an emotional part of the mind, but it makes judgments and it blames people. So if there's something that goes wrong, like a tornado, and people are helpless and they can't explain, they don't know when it's going to come again, and they don't understand why it happened, the tendency for the brain is to find someone to blame and then attack, because it makes us feel better. It makes us feel in control. What's that line from the West with the American president where he says,
"Oh yeah, in politics you have to figure out what is it? You have to tell. Sorry, you have to tell
them
people
who to be afraid of.
Yeah, tell people to be afraid and tell them who's to blame for what they're afraid of.
Yeah, and then you're done. You don't actually have to come up with a plan, because people's righteous minds get locked in, and now they can go looking for a bad person. And people have chosen different bad peoples in this scenario, right?
I know who mine are.
Yeah, we all have our little shack full of bad people.
Yeah.
But some people are saying, obviously, the coronavirus had to be created by human beings, because things can't evolve on their own, even though they've been doing it for billions of years, because we need someone to blame. So someone had to make it happen. That means that they can stop it, which they can't, because they didn't, is my personal opinion. I'm not an epidemiologist, but I don't think anyone
Weird, I didn't feel the need to make that disclaimer.
There you go. That shows our bias, doesn't it? And then other people are saying that it was elaborately planned so that there would be a pandemic, and then they could pretend to develop a vaccine, but it would kill people instead, so that they could reduce the population, which seems to me to be a very circuitous way of reducing the population. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to do a pandemic anyway, why not just kill them with that? Why not make it lethal instead of waiting for it and then getting a vaccine that will then kill them?
I just love this new idea of doing a pandemic. Hey, you're going to do a pandemic.
What if we threw a pandemic
and nobody came?
Crikey, there's wallabies out there.
You've not been getting compliments on your Aussie accent.
Oh!
No.
Is there a good Australian curse I could give them?
I don't know any clean ones.
Okay. This is a very raucous gathering room, because we've been locked up for 6 weeks, and so have you.
Yeah.
Do we have any other actual questions?
Yeah, I do actually.
I thought the righteous mind thing, it's interesting to know that the mind preferentially does that, because then when people get hysterical, you can go, oh, honey, I know what your brain is doing. I've done it before. I don't have to take your word for gospel.
And isn't there also a part of the just world thing in there where it's like, if someone malicious created it to hurt us, then random things can't just arise that can hurt us.
Yeah.
You know, and if we then in turn make the baddies go away,
then
okay.
Nothing
nothing can happen
can
out
ever
of
go
nowhere.
wrong. Yeah.
That's sort of amoral or whatever. Our friend Ann Woods says, how would you apply this to the anxiety of being in a community? And she names her community. She actually names her state, where lots of people are starting to behave as though the pandemic is over.
It's an interesting state of affairs, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a person who wants to get out there and is sick of it and just let me get the thing and I'll be fine, then you might, your discontent might be the shutdown itself. If you're a person who is like thinking, yeah, it's probably good to flatten the curve and not get sick, then you're probably upset at the people who are, running around coughing on the bell peppers in the grocery store, whatever they happen to be doing. So there's a lot of chance for us to accuse each other. Either way, that's a source of anxiety and irritation. There are physical steps you can take. If you're a get out and go person, you can get out and go outside. And if you're a person who's upset about the folks who get out and go, just increase your vigilance. I personally don't feel like getting sick. So as states open up, I'm actually going to increase the amount of caution that I use in going places and doing things.
Yeah, and I don't feel like being the vector that infects.
No, I don't want to be an infected vector. So either way, you can take your anger. So the steps you take are pragmatic, but the anger and the feeling of despair and out of control, hopelessness and all that, hold it in one hand and then go, okay, what do I love about, say, the people who are going out there? Okay, well, if they go out there and they choose to just develop, they want herd immunity, they want to get the virus, and they all get sick, well, then it's kind of a selective plague and it won't get to me. And well, that's kind of a comforting thought. And it's kind of nice that they're out there running around developing herd immunity, because it says something about the freedom of the human spirit, and it says something about their joie de vivre. And they can bring me objects if I need them or something. You reach for something to be delighted about. I think the politics around this thing are absolutely a hoot, fascinating and hilarious. Since I stopped being uptight, so I can see the things that bother me, and then I see the things that genuinely bring me joy. And then the tightness starts to relax, and everything feels more expansive and free. And that's actually what we want. Like, we're in a shutdown and we say, I'm not free. But the real, if we believe Pascal, that the source of all our misery is that we're unable to sit quietly alone in a room, then we're not free when we're running around trying to stay busy to avoid the pain inside us. We're free when we're forced to look inward and get liberation from the thoughts that torment us. And this was one method of easing that tension. And that's real freedom. That's what we wanted all along. So the pandemic comes to shut us down. Well, the pandemic comes to open us up.
There you go.
Yeah, it does not improve our Aussie accents, but she has that.
My Aussie accent is excellent.
It's perfect.
Yeah, took decades to perfect it. Listen, Martha, there's not a huge number of questions about the topic, and what there are is a huge number of questions about this thing called the Way of Integrity, aka tell us more about Martha's upcoming book.
Oh,
when's it going to be out? What's it about?
Okay, it's coming out in early 2021.
Sometime.
Because publishing is a slow and lumbering beast, and it takes much longer to make a book than one would think. So it's all finished except for the edits. And thanks to a bunch of you who voted, I didn't have a final say, but I was able to tell my editors The Way of Integrity was the winner, and they went with that. And it's about my belief that scrupulously living with no other objective than to be true is the way to not only a happy life, but to awakening. So I followed Dante, my favorite dude. Those of you who were into light will know my obsession with Dante. And I go through 4 different stages, step by step by step, of finding where we're not in integrity, like we're living in ways that don't make us happy because we were socialized to. There's only 2 reasons you lose your integrity, and that is, one is trauma and the other is socialization. And all it is, it's not a moral statement. You're a bad person if you're not in integrity. Integrity,
this is really important.
Integrity just means that all your parts are aligned correctly. So a machine in structural integrity runs well. If the structural integrity is breached, it doesn't run well. And there's lots of evidence to show that integrity is what makes our bodies and our minds run well. The moment we start to do things that aren't right for us, so if we pretend that we don't feel what we really feel, that we don't know what we really know, that we don't mean what we really mean, and that we don't do what we really like. What we really want to do, what we really think is right. Then we're out of integrity. We're out of alignment with our own desires. And at that point, the brain doesn't work as well, the body doesn't work as well, and the life situation doesn't work as well. So you may not even know, most people don't even know the places where we've lost our integrity. We have to follow our suffering inward, and it will show us very specifically where we're creating splits in our integrity. So for example, I'm gay. So yes, I know. Sorry. I was going to announce that later. I'm getting ready to come out. But I didn't know that growing up. It never occurred to me. I didn't even know what it was as a kid, or, I never thought about it. I really didn't. Actually, I married a man. I really loved him. And when that marriage was over and I found myself attracted to a woman, I realized, this is wrong. And it split me, because part of me loved a woman and part of me said, I'm not gay. And I had to bring that together. Maybe sexuality is not as, neatly segmented as I thought. So I came back into integrity. So by living your integrity, You come into harmony with yourself, but you will inevitably run afoul of some of your culture, your socialization. So being gay is not part of my socialization as a Mormon girl. So this book is about how to find your own integrity and then how to live it in spite of the fact that you're going to come up against cultural limitations and tribal shaming and punishments of various sorts, which will try to push you off your integrity. But if you stay on it, as I said, not just happiness, magic.
You guys,
Magic.
It's so good. It's so good. You're going to die. It's so good. Oh, I shouldn't say it. Let's not put that on the dust jacket.
Right.
It's so good. You will die.
You will die.
No, I'm not kidding. It's amazing. It's the best one yet.
Because I wrote it straight from my own truth. And I've never actually done that where every single word I parsed and said, is this true for me? And it
is it true?
Is it true? So, no. Scandalous particle. All right. So this has been a very sort of weird and balancing gathering because I'm just like having fun in quarantine.
Yeah.
We're going to lock down.
Yeah.
And I love you guys for listening and for showing up because that's what it is. It's just a chance to show up and be together at a time when we're not together. But we've always been together long before the pandemic. And we'll always be together. We're always together in the week.
That's right.
And we'll be together forever.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
No worries.
Yeah. So love you all. Have a wonderful week. See you next week. And stay well. Stay well.